there are very powerful psychological and social effects of inequality, more to do, I suppose, with feelings of superiority and inferiority, that kind of division, and maybe going with the sort of respect, disrespect, people feeling looked down on at the bottom, which, by the way, is why violence is more common in more unequal societies. It's the trigger to violence is so often people feeling looked down on and disrespected.
If there is one principle I can emphasize that is the most important principle underlying the prevention of violence, it would be equality. The single most significant factor that affects the rate of violence is the degree of equality versus the degree of inequality in that society.
So what one's looking at is a sort of general social dysfunction. It's not just one or two things that go wrong as inequality increases. It seems to be everything, whether we're talking about crime or health or mental illness or whatever.
One of the really disturbing findings out in public health there is never ever make the mistake of being poor or being born poor. Your health pays for it in endless sorts of ways, something known as the health socioeconomic gradient. As you move down from the highest strata in society in terms of socioeconomic status, every step down, health gets worse for umpteen different diseases. Life expectancy gets worse, infant mortality rate, everything you could look at. So the poorer you are, starting off being, the person who's $1 income behind Bill Gates, the poorer you are in this country, on the average, the worse your health is. This tells us something really important. The health connection with poverty, it's not about being poor, it's about feeling poor.
Increasingly, we recognize that chronic stress is an important influence on health, but the most important sources of stress are the quality of social relations.
And if there is anything that lowers the quality of social relations, it is the socioeconomic stratification of society. What science has now shown is that regardless of material wealth, the stress of simply living in a stratified society leads to a vast spectrum of public health problems. And the greater the inequality, the worse they become. Life expectancy, longer in more equal countries. Drug abuse, less in more equal countries. Mental illness, less in more equal countries. Social capital, meaning the ability of people to trust each other, naturally greater in more equal countries. Educational scores, higher in more equal countries. Homicide rates, less in more equal countries. Crime and rates of imprisonment, less in more equal countries. It goes on and on. Infant mortality, obesity, teen birth rate, less in more equal countries. And perhaps most interesting, innovation, greater in more equal countries, which challenges the age-old notion that a competitive, stratified society is somehow more creative and inventive. Moreover, a study done in the UK called the Whitehall Study confirmed that there is a social distribution of disease as you go from the top of the socioeconomic ladder to the bottom. For example, it was found that the lowest rungs of the hierarchy had a 4-fold increase of heart disease-based mortality compared to the highest rungs. And this pattern exists irrespective of access to health care. Hence, the worse a person's relative financial status, the worse their health is going to be on average. This phenomenon is rooted in what could be termed psychosocial stress, and it is at the foundation of the greatest social distortions plaguing our society today. Its cause? The monetary market system. It is, in fact, the socioeconomic system itself at its very foundation.